Topic 12C, Incomplete and Codominance. In our examples so far, there have been two alleles, dominant and recessive, and in these, one dominant allele is all that's necessary to produce a fully dominant phenotype. A dominant allele can generally be defined as a fully functional version of a gene. In our purple flower color example, we can imagine that the dominant gene is necessary to produce a purple pigment in the petal cells. We can think of the recessive allele as a mutated version of the gene that does not produce a pigment. So there's no color. Not all dominant alleles produce a fully dominant phenotype in the heterozygote, and this is called incomplete dominance. For example, our homozygous dominant pea plant produces pigment from two dominant alleles, which turns the flower deep red. The heterozygote only produces pigment from one dominant allele. So the petal cells will have half the amount of pigment and will not be as intensely colored, so they appear to be pink. A homozygous recessive will produce no pigment and will remain white. In a Mendelian cross, the incompletely dominant allele will be evident in the F1 generation because they are all heterozygotes and will all have the intermediate phenotype. The F2 generation will have a 1:2:1 phenotypic ratio instead of 3:1, since the heterozygotes have a distinctive phenotype. Codominance is a case where there is more than one possible dominant allele. The first dominant allele in this example is represented by F superscript R and produces a red pigment. The second dominant allele is represented by F superscript Y and it produces a yellow pigment. In the case of codominance, a heterozygote will have two working alleles, both producing a product. The two products intermingle to produce a single phenotype. In this example, the red and yellow pigments mix and it appears orange. In a Mendelian cross, the codominance will be evident in the F1 heterozygotes, which will have elements of both parents mixed together. In the F2, we see the same ratio that we saw with incomplete dominance, but the gene expression phenomenon that produced the intermediate is different. To review, a dominant allele almost always is an allele that produces a product. A recessive allele does not. Incomplete and codominant alleles have a similar inheritance pattern, but they can be distinguished by understanding how each allele is producing or failing to produce a product.